When I was a freshman in college, the person who was supposed to be my roommate ended up switching to a different school last minute. This worked out great for me because it meant I got to have a dorm room all to myself. Because of the extra space, my dorm room ended up being the place that my friends and I would hang out in the evenings. What I thought was going to be a great thing ended up getting scary about 2 months into the first semester. It was a fall morning and I was leaving a little early that day to grab a coffee before class. I opened the door to my room and immediately noticed a small envelope on the floor along with a single red rose. I opened up the envelope and found a note inside that read, "You are very beautiful. I will do anything to make you mine." I lived in a female-only dorm, and you would have to have a key to get in anyway, so I thought this was strange. I assumed it was just one of my friends playing a prank on me, so I put the note on my desk and went about my day. That evening, when all of my girlfriends gathered in my room to hang out, I asked them if they had left a note, but they all denied it and began teasing me, saying I had a secret admirer. I began thinking the note was left by mistake. But then a couple of more days went by and I found yet another delivery at my door. It was a box of chocolates and another note that read, "You have the most stunning red hair. You are my queen." This was when I began to worry because I do have red hair, which I knew no one else on my floor had. Was somebody stalking me? I thought about telling my resident assistant, but I knew she was busy with her own stuff, so I let it go. But the notes kept coming. Sometimes they were in my mailbox, other times they were left on my desk in class. I had no idea how this person knew where I was all the time. I began switching up the paths I took during the day to throw whoever it was off, but I was feeling increasingly scared. I constantly felt like I was being watched. I told the campus police about the situation, but they did little to help. Eventually, friends from my floor and I decided to take things into our own hands and plan an overnight stakeout. We were all going to take turns watching through the peephole in our various rooms to see who walked through the hallway that night and if they left anything at my doorstep. The plan was to confront the person and at least try to get a picture of them. It was around 1 a.m. when it happened. I watched as a tall, hooded figure came up to my doorstep and dropped an envelope there. I flung open the door and asked him what he was doing. The man was startled and began sprinting down the hallway, but my friends had heard me yell and had come outside. They were able to snap a photo that showed the man's face. We passed it along to the police, and the man was found hiding not far from our dorm. He had been breaking in through a door used by a custodian and stalking me for over a month. He has since been banned from the university grounds, but sometimes I feel like someone is still watching me. When I was in college, I had a class where we would read more difficult works of literature, like Shakespeare. Unlike a lot of my classmates, I actually enjoyed this type of stuff and found it easy to understand. I tried not to show just how well I was doing in class because I knew some of the other students would probably ask me for help and I was already swamped with my own studies. One day, a guy who I'll call Max sat directly behind me. He was a strange kid who rarely spoke in class and almost always sat on the other side of the room. So I was confused about why he was sitting behind me all of a sudden. The professor was handing out papers, and as soon as he put mine on my desk, I snatched it up quickly before anyone could see the perfect score marked at the top. But I wasn't quick enough, and Max leaned over my shoulder and said, "Perfect score, huh?" I didn't answer and just tried to go about my business and acted like I didn't hear him. When the period was over, I began making my way out of class, but Max quickly walked in front of me, blocking my exit. He told me that he was really struggling in the class and was wondering if I could meet up with him to help him. I politely told him that I had a lot of classes that semester and was pretty busy at the moment. I then walked past him, but he continued following me all the way to the bus stop. He went on and on about how he was going to fail and I was his last chance. At this point, I was starting to get annoyed by his pushiness, so I just ignored him as I got on the bus without looking at him. Luckily, he didn't follow me. But the pushiness would continue every day after class when he would plead with me to tutor him. As time went on, I began to think this had less to do with schoolwork and more to do with him wanting to spend time with me. I was creeped out, but tried to ignore him as much as possible. One afternoon, I was washing my hands in the bathroom in the building where my literature class was held. I was the only one there. I heard the door open, and when I glanced up, I was shocked to see Max standing there, blocking the door with his body. I asked him to move, but he just stared at me, a frightening look in his eyes. I made a move to grab the doorknob, but he reached out and grabbed my arm. What he probably didn't know was that I had taken karate for 10 years as a kid. I gave him one swift kick that brought him to his knees and then sprinted out of the bathroom. I ended up calling the police, and Max was later arrested. One thing a girl should always know how to do is defend herself. One evening when I was a junior in college, my friend Jenny and I decided we wanted to go see a movie. Neither one of us had a car, but the nearest movie theater was only around a 15-minute walk, so we decided to go on foot. We got to the theater without any problem and enjoyed the movie, which was a pretty scary horror film. When Jenny and I got out of the theater, we were giggling and a little bit on edge from just how scary the movie had been. It was late at night at this point and pretty dark out, so we knew we needed to be aware of our surroundings when we walked back to our dorm. The theater was just slightly off campus, so we had to walk by numerous restaurants, shops, and bars to get back to our dorm. Just about everything was closed by this time of night, and there weren't many people in the streets. As I looked ahead, a sketchy-looking car caught my eye. It was parked on the side of the street, along the sidewalk, but it didn't appear to be picking anyone up or dropping anyone off. Even though we didn't say anything to one another, I could tell Jenny noticed the car too. When we eventually had to pass the car, I glanced over at it to get a look at the driver. The windows were so tinted, I couldn't see anyone inside. Jenny and I continued walking, speeding up our pace slightly. After about 5 minutes of walking, I glanced over my shoulder and noticed that the car was following us and was a short distance away. I told Jenny this, and we both began walking even faster. The car continued to follow us, and I suggested to Jenny that we switch up our path and begin running through the nearby woods, where they wouldn't be able to follow us in the car. She agreed, and we both took off in a sprint, heading in a full-on sprint through the woods. I looked back behind us and saw that the car was parked, and 2 hooded men were running after us. Jenny and I continued running until we were out of the woods and on the same street that our dorm was located. I was running so fast that I ended up tripping on the sidewalk, injuring my ankle in the process. I stood up and felt a piercing pain and quickly discovered I could barely walk. I heard pounding footsteps not far away and knew the 2 men were gaining on us. I urged Jenny to keep running, but she wouldn't leave me. She threw her arm around me and tried to help me walk forward. The next thing I knew, I was being tugged backward with extreme force, causing me to fall back on the ground. The men roughly grabbed me by both my arms and began pulling me back into the woods. Jenny began screaming for help at the top of her lungs. By sheer luck, 2 girls were walking by with a large German Shepherd, and they heard the commotion and began running towards us. When the men noticed this, they let me go and took off running in the opposite direction. I watched in shock as one of the girls unhooked the German Shepherd from the leash, and the dog took off running after the men who tried to kidnap me. One of the girls ran after the dog, while the other one stayed behind to call 911. I got taken to the hospital in an ambulance, and Jenny explained to the police what happened. I later found out that the German Shepherd had managed to pin one of the men to the ground and hold him there until the police arrived. The police caught up with the other man later that evening.